Hello everybody, I'm Cassidy, I'm the Hippie Catholic. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe to be part of the conversation. So, candles, sometimes chanting various different words. Sounds a lot like witchcraft, right? But these practices can also be a key part of sacramental worship traditions within the Catholic faith. Look at prayer candles, for example. Prayer candles are used in both witchcraft and in Catholicism to send positive intentions out to a higher power. Many of you may be asking, what's the difference? Is there a difference? Are mystics and witches the same? Well, we're going to dive into that today. This is going to be an introductory video to a series about Catholic mysticism that I'm going to have on my channel because I, myself, identify as a Catholic mystic. Many people do not know what mystics are, much less about their rich spiritual traditions within the Catholic faith. Many within the Catholic faith actually try to deny the existence of the mystics, or not like maybe outright deny, but they definitely try to keep us in the basement, if you know what I mean. We're just gonna dive into this. The Catholic Church has a rich tradition of having mystical saints, including Saint Hildegard of Bingen, who wrote all about astrology, which granted astrology was taken as science at the time, but she did it. She also invented an entire language so that women wouldn't have to talk to men anymore. That's worth a whole other video, so I'm still working on my saint series, so subscribe if you want to see that. Along with Saint Teresa of Avila, she's a really cool mystic, and she had mystical visions of God and the angels. And also we can't forget about Padre Pio, who was visited by a dead person. Spooky ghosts. Clearly these are saints who have mystical or spiritual gifts, as we'd call them. I think that I kind of come from a unique perspective with this because I have many loved ones who have sensitive or psychic abilities. I myself do not. Well, actually, no, I kind of do, but that's a whole other rant. All these people are very much people of God, children of God, very God-loving people, and it's mentioned in the Old Testament a bunch of times that people who are mediums or speak to spirits are damned. So we kind of have a conflict here. Clearly we have saints that have these mystical abilities, so whatever they were referring to in the Old Testament must be different in some way from the spiritual abilities that the mystical saints, have. There's also a whole thing about when you get confirmed that there's the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. I think there might be more. You're supposed to get a spiritual gift potentially on your confirmation day. So when you consider saints like these, we must ask, where is the line? Is there a line? Where is it? Well, I'm here to tell you that there is indeed a line, and we're going to be introduced to that today. Basically, the line all comes down to theology and intention. So witchcraft is a diverse set of spiritual practices that takes different forms for different practitioners. These practitioners may be pagan, they may be atheists, they may be more aligned with some darker things. So witches take their spiritual power from a variety of places. These include energy from the earth, spirits of all kinds, and also the energy from within oneself. A witch's ideology is rather individualistic, so spells that can be used to manipulate interpersonal outcomes are morally acceptable. For example, in the cases of love spells and curses, these practices are considered morally acceptable for witches because there's no moral consensus within the group to decide what code of conduct all witches should follow. I have been told that there are some laws within Wicca, but again, not all witches practice Wicca. It's a very individualistic religion. For me, I feel like there's one objective morality. I don't feel like that morality is subjective. When I'm referring to the morality of a group or what's moral or what's not moral, I'm more or less saying that particular group thinks this is good or this is bad or whatever, I think you get it. Mystics, on the other hand, align exclusively with the power of the Holy Trinity. That includes the angels and saints as well. But all mystical power is derived from Source, the Creator, our God. Mystics, both in the past and today, light candles, use incense, use prayer cards. Many will also even make altars in their homes. A lot like witches. Actually kind of the same thing that most witches do for their practice. So the difference is that mystics do not associate with any energy that is not of God, and they do not invite anything that is not of God. They acknowledge that there is one God. That's what they align with. They align with that light. It all comes down to who's God and who's not, sort of a thing. We see this a lot in like the ancient Hebrew scriptures. A lot of the pagan religions of the Middle East had a pantheon of gods, and they ultimately usually believed in one supreme deity, but the difference came from how do we view angelic spirits. Basically, pagans believed that the lesser spirits that the Hebrews considered angelic were actually divine. Basically, they worshipped angelic beings as gods rather than as created beings. So that's what we see this theme, especially with darker entities. Darker entities want to be worshipped as gods. That's kind of their big MO. In my experience, you could run into trouble with witchcraft when you worship pagan deities, because pagan deities can either be either just completely fictitious, or they can be other spirits that don't really have the best intentions for humanity. Again, this is a Catholic channel, so I'm going to be giving you a Catholic perspective. I guess take that as you will. Mystics do not allow any of that kind of stuff in, but their worship practices are very similar to that of witches. The main difference is that a mystic's prayer is always to God, or to Mary, or the saints, or basically because we believe in the communion of saints and stuff, so that's a thing. That's theology as well if you're Catholic. Also, mystics acknowledge that their power comes from source. It's not from solely within themselves. They're tapping into a divine energy that's conscious, a divine energy that can consent. And that's also something that's interesting as well, is that mystics do not participate in spiritual activities that oppress another human being's will, for good or for ill. For example, like they would never partake in anything like curses or love spells. A mystic wouldn't want to force something to happen. A mystic would want to send their intentions out to God and let God kind of make the call of what to do. I've met some Catholic converts who were formerly witches, and they found that the tradition was easier for them to convert to Catholicism rather than if they were to, say, convert to evangelicalism. Because of the rich Catholic tradition and mysticism, a lot of my friends who are Catholic converts will literally use some of the same prayer candles, the same incense. They'll use all the same materials that they used for their craft, but they've had it be blessed, and they use those materials now for their Catholic mysticism rather than for witchcraft. I talked to a priest about this, and the priest told me that, you know, sacramentals, crucifixes, rosaries, they're symbols and they're powerful symbols, but they're not magic. They can only do so much. What makes things happen, or what protects you, is the will of God. And it's your will aligning with the will of God. It's what makes things happen. And let's say you're like doing a house blessing, it's the protection of God that is protecting you and your space. It's not just from you or from the environment or from any other spirit that's not light. Now, what about tarot? Some of you may be asking. Tarot is tricky and complicated. I've heard so many stories surrounding it. I have friends who used to be really into using tarot cards but no longer use them now because of bad spiritual experiences that they have. I do know that tarot cards can and will, in many cases, open up doorways to things that you don't want in your house. Tarot cards can also act as like an invitation to things that are not so good, and that is something that you should consider about them. Should we write off tarot as being incompatible with Catholicism? Again, it's a bit more complicated than that. In fact, one of the most important works of esoteric Christianity is called Meditations of the Tarot. The English translation of this book even has an afterword by Cardinal Hans-Jürgen von Balthasar. That sounds like a Lord of the Rings type name, I don't know. The book was actually reportedly owned by a recent former pope, so I think that's pretty interesting. Now, you want my perspective on tarot? I personally do not practice it. When I was a younger teenager, I did because I was enthralled with boys and I wanted to know if the guys I liked me back, you know, all that good stuff. Using tarot cards and like divination and stuff is theologically problematic because it's pursuing like hidden knowledge that's not given to you by God, and hence puts you at odds with His will. Looking to find out what your future is, it kind of takes away your free will because you're not kind of forging your own path. You're wanting to be told what that path is. instead of finding out what it is for yourself. So there's a whole bunch of theology surrounding it, and I can't get into all of it in this video, but again, this is an introductory video, so this is kind of just to introduce you to the concept of Catholic mystics. But I have a very, very nifty substitute for tarot. These babies are called Archetype cards, and these were actually sold at a Catholic university that isn't too far from me. Basically, it has 88 cards for therapists and teachers. It uses psychoanalytics and some Jungian mysticism. Carl Jung was a very, very spiritual, mystical man. These are a really, really cool alternative for somebody who is thinking about going into the world of Catholic mysticism, but has a background in witchcraft, but doesn't really want to use it for divination anymore. Technically, you could use these for divination, but again, that comes from intention. These were meant to be used for therapy. These are really cool because like you can kind of use them to mentally check in with yourself. There's a whole bunch of exercises that you can do with them, and basically they're theologically correct because they basically only check in with what's going on with you and what's going on with your present internal world. I'm just going to show you a few of them. So basically how you would use these, you would spread them out all over the floor or something, and you would pick out the first 5 that you're immediately drawn to. You don't look at the words, you don't even look at the images for too long. It's just whatever one you're intuitively really drawn to. You can look at these cards and then appraise for yourself, like, what do these mean for me? You can do that by like taking a journal or something and then write down the name of each card and write down what do you associate with that card. And these cards can kind of give you insight into how you view yourself. It kind of can give you some insight on your ego. And these are archetype cards, so they indeed have archetypes within them. One of my main archetypes that I got was the activist. I feel like that I'm drawn to the activist energy. I feel like that I view myself as an activist. And I've used these with a lot of my friends and with my loved ones, and people really love them. They are really, really helpful. And what's really cool is that each card is created and painted by a different artist. And that kind of like encourages a more diverse analysis. Usually a tarot deck will be painted by one artist, and so what's different about these is that they have different artists. And actually the creator said that her goal was to make a tarot deck better than tarot decks. Again, this isn't tarot, it's an archetype deck. If you're interested in purchasing one for yourself, I'm going to put the website information down below. 100% of the profit goes to helping mental health services and mental health organizations. I think that that's absolutely amazing. I highly recommend these for people who are interested in converting to Catholicism and want to still keep their mystical spiritual practices. These are also cool because it's kind of like a mixture between spirituality and psychology. So in conclusion, the line between a witch and a mystic is very thin, but is very important. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Again, this was a short kind of intro video, and I'm going to be doing more Catholic mystic videos because I myself identify as a Catholic mystic. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And I'm still working on my Saint series. I wanted to release a video about Nicholas Black Elk this month to kind of start off like the Saint series, but I wanted to put more energy into researching him because Nicholas Black Elk is so cool. Like, I know he's not canonized yet, but like, we need this to happen. We need him to be canonized. Thank you so much guys for watching. I am Cassidy, I'm the Hippie Catholic. God bless.